On November 16th, 1989, a 16-year-old boy sat in a small interrogation room surrounded by Peekskill investigators who already had their minds made up that they knew exactly what had happened. His name was Jeffrey Deskovic, and at some point during that interrogation, after hours of questioning, pressure, exhaustion, and fear, he looked at the detectives across from him and he told them that he raped and killed 15-year-old Angela Correa.
Oh?
This is the murder of Angela Correa and the wrongful conviction of Jeffrey Deskovic. What's up, guys? Welcome to Crime Snob Podcast, where every Monday we dive into some of the most twisted local true crime stories. My name is Angela Correa.
And I'm Alice.
And today, do I have a story for you? Today we're talking about not only Angela Correa, but about Jeffrey Deskovic, and a confession that years later would be recognized as one of the most infamous, coerced, false confessions in New York history. So, let's get into it. Back in the fall of 1989, Jeffrey was just a sophomore at Peekskill High School in Peekskill, New York. He lived in a small 3-bedroom apartment with his mother, grandmother, younger brother, 5 cats, and a fish tank that sat bubbling quietly in the background.
Wow.
Jeffrey never knew his father, and growing up, money was tight. In his neighborhood, Jeffrey was actually pretty well liked. People who knew him outside of school thought he was friendly, maybe a little quirky, but harmless. School was different, though. At Peekskill High School, Jeffrey didn't really fit in. He wasn't athletic, he wasn't popular, and he didn't move confidently through social circles the way other kids seemed to. He was awkward and sensitive, and the kind of teenager who wanted badly to belong, but never quite figured out how to fit in. And unfortunately, when something terrible happened in town, those qualities would end up making him stand out in all the wrong ways. On November 15th, 1989, 15-year-old Angela Correa disappeared. That morning at school had started just like any other day, but by the next day, an announcement came over the PA system at Peekskill High School telling students that Angela was missing. Students were instructed that if they knew anything at all, they should report to the principal's office immediately. Teachers, administrators, and parents were frightened enough that they began implementing buddy systems for students walking home.
Wow.
Angela had last been seen the afternoon before. She left school at around 2:45 p.m., went home, changed into more comfortable clothes, and then headed back out to work on her school photography project, carrying a camera with a telephoto lens in a plastic bag. So remember, this was like the 80s.
Right.
With her, she also carried a cassette player and headphones. Inside that cassette player was a New Kids on the Block tape.
So cute.
According to witnesses, Angela was last seen at around 3:30 p.m. near a park by Hillcrest Elementary School, while a local man was taking his daily walk. He later told investigators that he remembered hearing voices nearby that sounded like they were possibly arguing, but he couldn't really make out exactly what was being said. 2 days later, on November 17th, her body was discovered in a heavily wooded area of the woods behind Peekskill's Hillcrest Elementary School.
Wow.
She was mostly naked, partially covered in leaves, with her clothes scattered nearby.
Oh, God.
Underneath her body, investigators found a torn, wet note that she had written to a classmate named Freddie Claxton. That note was dated November 15th, so the day that she was last seen.
Okay.
Jeffrey later remembered reading about the discovery in a local Westchester newspaper, like everyone else in town.
Right.
According to Angela's autopsy report, she died from a fractured skull. She had internal hemorrhaging and asphyxiation caused by strangulation.
Oh my God. This was a serious
Violent attack.
Yeah.
Her body was covered in cuts and bruises as if she had been dragged face down through the dirt and brush. So they think the attack happened somewhere, and then where they found her body, she had been dragged to.
Right.
It was also immediately clear to investigators that she had been sexually assaulted.
Oh my God.
The medical examiner estimated her time of death to be sometime between 3:30 and 4:30 p.m. on the afternoon that she disappeared.
So literally when she was on her way.
Yes.
Yeah.
The investigation quickly intensified. Lead detectives Thomas McIntyre and David Levine began interviewing Angela's classmates while rumors spread rapidly throughout Peekskill High School. Early on, police focused on Freddie, likely because of the note found underneath Angela's body. But Freddie had an alibi that checked out, and eventually investigators cleared him. That's when their attention shifted somewhere else, toward a teenage boy who seemed unusually emotional about the case. Someone who didn't quite fit in socially. Someone investigators had started to view as suspicious. Jeffrey Deskovic.
Okay.
On December 12th, 1989, Jeffrey was walking to school where plainclothes officers were waiting for him, calling him over as he approached them. Jeffrey later said he immediately felt nervous, but the officers reassured him. They told him they just wanted help with the investigation. Jeffrey even told them that he probably wouldn't be useful for them because he didn't know anything about the case, but the officers insisted they wanted him to come with them anyway. Reluctantly, he agreed.
This was at school?
So this was on his way to school. So he walked to school every day, and from what I understand, he had to kind of like walk up a hill, and they were like up the hill. So as he approached them, they kind of came out of the car and waited for him to get closer, and that's when they started talking to him.
Super shady.
Especially because he's a minor.
100%. That's illegal. Maybe it wasn't in the 80s.
I don't know, but he's definitely young, and there's no parents, and so that's a little.
I'm surprised that was even an admissible.
You will see.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. At first, the interview felt friendly enough. The detectives joked with him, acted casual, and made it seem like he was there helping them. But as time went on, the tone began to change. Eventually, they flat out told Jeffrey that he was a suspect. The detectives alternated between intimidating him and making him feel important. One moment, they were playing good cop, the next bad cop. And they were telling him things like, quote, "Kids won't talk to us, but they'll talk to you."
Oh.
Jeffrey wanted desperately to feel accepted and useful. As a child, he had dreamed about becoming a police officer himself.
That's so sad.
And he especially admired the detective who played the good cop role. Looking back later, Jeffrey realized how deeply that affected him. And don't forget, he also didn't have a father figure in his life.
Right.
And I'm sure that played somewhat into it also.
Totally.
Over the next several weeks, Jeffrey met with investigators multiple times, even after his mother objected. Although he understood he was technically considered a suspect, he didn't fully grasp what that actually meant.
Fair.
His mother eventually brought him to an attorney who strongly instructed him not to speak to the police anymore.
Yeah.
But Jeffrey didn't understand why. In his mind, innocent people talk to the police.
Ugh.
He believed he could help himself.
Sweet boy.
He even became combative with his mother over it and eventually stopped telling her when he would meet with them, doing so behind her back.
No, why is this allowed?
I don't know. So I remember seeing something where he said, like, as a teenage boy, you just think, I'm right.
Of course.
I know everything. My parents don't know what they're talking about.
Obviously, yeah.
So just to kind of avoid the fights, he just stopped telling her altogether that he was going to talk to investigators.
Wow.
He visited the crime scene multiple times and regularly approached investigators with rumors that he heard circulating around at school.
Because they told him to.
And throughout all of this, detectives repeatedly pressured him to take a polygraph test.
Oh my God.
At first, Jeffrey refused. But eventually, investigators changed tactics. They told him new information had come in about the case and that they wanted to share it with him. But first, they needed him to pass a polygraph test so they could fully clear him. They assured him that if he passed, they would stop viewing him as a suspect altogether. And so, Jeffrey believed them. On January 25th, 1990, at around 9:30 in the morning, Jeffrey secretly left to meet investigators without telling his mother or younger brother or grandmother where he was going. He had no lawyer with him, no parents, and the detectives drove him about 40 minutes away to Brewster, New York to take the polygraph exam. Once there, they gave him multiple cups of coffee and began questioning him for hours. Over and over, they asked him the same questions repeatedly. When Jeffrey denied involvement, the interrogators pushed harder. Quote, "What do you mean you didn't do it?" one investigator reportedly told him. "The polygraph already showed us that you did. We just need you to verbally confirm it." Hour after hour, the pressure escalated. And then the detective that Jeffrey trusted most, the good cop, came into the room and told him that the other officers wanted to hurt him. He claimed he had been trying to hold them back, but he couldn't for much longer.
What is happening?
He told Jeffrey that if he wanted to go home, if he wanted all of this to stop, then he needed to confess. Jeffrey was 16 years old, scared, exhausted, completely alone, and eventually, desperate for the interrogation to end, he broke. He began constructing a story using details that investigators had fed him, combined with things that he had already read in newspapers about Angela's murder. What's incredibly important is that this confession was never recorded, reportedly.
Oh.
There was no video, no audio, not even a written statement that was signed by Jeffrey.
So, okay.
After confessing, Jeffrey collapsed onto the floor, curled into the fetal position, and sobbed uncontrollably.
Oh.
How sad is that?
My God.
But investigators treated this like a victory. They drove him back to Peekskill and brought him pizza. Then they fingerprinted him. Jeffrey later remembered being annoyed about the ink on his fingers and asking why they were doing this. When officers responded that they had the right to, he still didn't fully understand. I think he literally thought he was going to go home after this.
Yeah.
So I feel like he was just really confused as to what was happening at this point.
I'm also confused as to what is happening at this point.
Then came the moment he realized he was being charged with murder.
Jesus Christ.
Jeffrey later described feeling blindsided, terrified, and betrayed.
Yeah.
When police finally called his mother to the station, he is a minor. I don't even know how any of this flew back then.
Yes.
She was only allowed to see her son through glass.
Oh my God.
Jeffrey spent 35 days in jail before a local businessman posted bail for him. But by then, the damage was already done.
Yeah.
Most of the community believed he was guilty. People hated him. Kids weren't allowed to play with him anymore. He wasn't permitted to return to school.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went, he felt judged and isolated. Jeffrey became overwhelmed with hopelessness and eventually attempted suicide by swallowing an entire bottle of Tylenol before going to sleep.
Oh.
Afterward, he was committed to Rockland Children's Psychiatric Hospital for 6 months.
6 months?
6 months.
Wow.
When he was released, he moved to another county to live with relatives.
Okay.
But even there, the nightmare wasn't over. Jeffrey was represented by a public defender named Peter Insero, who had been provided by the Legal Aid Society. Peter pushed for an insanity defense, but Jeffrey adamantly refused because he knew that he hadn't committed the crime. So he looked at it as I'm not going to plead insanity to something I didn't even do. That kind of means that I did it, you know?
Yeah.
Jeffrey also insisted that he had an alibi at the time. He said he had been playing wiffle ball with a friend around the time Angela was murdered. His attorney allegedly never properly investigated his alibi. Jeffrey wanted to testify during pretrial hearings to explain how his confession had been coerced.
Yeah.
But his attorney also allegedly discouraged him, warning that any inconsistencies could later be used against him. And from what I read, he kind of said, no one's story can be perfect all the time. So if you go ahead and speak on your behalf now, and then during trial they have you speak on your behalf and something's different, they're going to use it against you. So he basically told him not to explain any of this. Then came another shocking development. Less than 2 months after Jeffrey's arrest, the FBI crime lab returned results from semen swabs collected from Angela's body.
Okay.
Jeffrey was not a match. He also did not match 3 hairs that were recovered from Angela's body. For many people, that should have ended the case right there. But instead, prosecutors moved forward anyway.
Wow.
When Jeffrey's trial began in November of 1990, prosecutors explained away the DNA problem by suggesting there must have been another accomplice, or that the semen belonged to a consensual sexual encounter Angela may have had with Freddie Claxton.
So that's whose semen it was?
So, no. Wait, listen. Remarkably, prosecutors never even compared the DNA to Freddie. Never even compared it. So they're just kind of pulling strings here, and it's okay, if that's the case, then why don't we test? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay.
As for the hairs found on Angela's body, prosecutors suggested that they may have belonged to the medical examiner or an assistant, despite never testing those either. Instead, prosecutors focused on what they called Jeffrey's, quote, fit, with an offender profile provided by the NYPD. a white or Hispanic male under 25, likely socially awkward, a loner, insecure around women, and possibly someone who knew Angela. Then came the confession. Prosecutors argued Jeffrey knew details about the crime scene that only the killer could possibly know, including information about the note to Freddie. Jeffrey insisted that those details came from detectives and newspapers, but by then the confession had become more powerful than the facts themselves. Meanwhile, Jeffrey's defense was disastrously inconsistent. His attorneys allegedly failed to confirm his alibi. They barely challenged the DNA evidence, and they struggled to clearly explain how false confessions can happen. At different times, they argued the confession never even happened.
Okay.
And then they argued that it was coerced. And then they suggested that maybe Jeffrey had known what he had said because he had heard rumors. Maybe he imagined the events, or even witnessed the murder firsthand, but it wasn't him who committed it. To jurors, it made Jeffrey seem unbelievable.
Okay.
Jeffrey himself was never allowed to testify in his own defense because his attorneys, again, strongly advised against it. Then, just before closing arguments, prosecutors announced that they had misplaced 4 pieces of evidence over Thanksgiving break, including Angela's bra. And I'll tell you why that's important. This was devastating for the defense because Jeffrey's alleged confession claimed that he tore Angela's bra off during the attack. But the bra was reportedly a pullover style with no snaps or clasps, making that physically impossible. So it was like a sports bra, ultimately, I'm guessing.
I see.
Without the bra available in court, the defense abandoned the argument altogether. Instead, they requested a mistrial, but the judge denied it. During deliberations, jurors even asked to see the bra themselves, but prosecutors informed them that they could not produce it. Eventually, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Jeffrey was sentenced to life in prison, and at just 17 years old, because he had been tried as an adult, Jeffrey was sent to a maximum security men's prison.
Oh, no.
He had become one of the youngest inmates there.
That's outrageous.
I know. And because his conviction involved both murder and a sexual assault, he lived in constant fear of violence from other inmates. So, Jeffrey kept his head down. He earned his GED, he worked as a teacher's aide, he played basketball, ping pong, chess, and spent countless hours reading nonfiction books and studying in the prison law library. He completed his associate's degree and worked towards a bachelor's before funding cuts ended the program. He also took courses in computer repair, plumbing, painting, and business. But most importantly, he never stopped trying to prove his innocence. He constantly researched legal cases, wrote letters to attorneys, and searched for any possible way to overturn his conviction. Eventually, one of those letters reached an investigator who believed him.
Thank God.
She worked with Jeffrey for over a year trying to find attorneys willing to take his case pro bono and encouraged him to contact the Innocence Project again, a nonprofit organization dedicated to exonerating wrongfully convicted individuals through DNA evidence. Jeffrey had reached out before, but without success.
Okay.
But this time, they answered.
Thank God.
By 2006, there had also been a major shift in the district attorney's office. Janine Pirro, who had long opposed Jeffrey's request to run the DNA through CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system database, was no longer in office. New district attorney Janet DeFiore agreed to meet with Barry Scheck from the Innocence Project and approved the new DNA testing. After 16 years in prison, Jeffrey, who had since been transferred to Sing Sing Correctional Facility in Austin, received a visit from Innocence Project attorney Nina Morrison. She told him the DNA had finally matched another man named Stephen Cunningham.
Wow!
A convicted murderer already serving a life sentence for another killing in Westchester County, committed just years after Angela's murder.
Oh my God.
Stephen Cunningham eventually confessed to killing Angela. The district attorney's office moved to dismiss the indictment entirely, publicly apologizing on behalf of the Westchester County District Attorney's Office and the Peekskill Police Department. After 16 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit, Jeffrey Deskovic walked out of prison a free man.
He spent like half his life in prison.
He did. 5 years later, he received approximately $40 million in compensation through settlements with New York State, Westchester County, Peekskill, and a civil rights lawsuit involving Putnam County, because don't forget that's where he went to go do the lie detector test.
That makes me feel this much better.
I know.
This much better.
I know. After his release, Jeffrey worked hard to earn his bachelor's degree, then a master's degree from Mercy College, which had offered him a scholarship.
Wow.
Later, he earned his law degree and founded the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, an organization dedicated to helping wrongfully convicted individuals gain their freedom.
Wow.
Within its first several years, the foundation helped exonerate multiple people and contributed to the passing of new laws aimed at preventing future wrongful convictions. Jeffrey Deskovic lost 16 years of his life for a crime he did not commit. But even after his exoneration, one question still remained. Who actually killed Angela Correa? Next week, we're going to dive into Stephen Cunningham, the DNA evidence that exposed the truth in the murders of Angela Correa and Patricia Morrison. Trust me, you don't want to miss that.